Welcome to Culturecast. My name is Sister Mary Michael, and I'm a Dominican Sister of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. You may have seen us, as we are located all around the world. Following in the footsteps of St. Dominic, our mission is to be teachers and preachers. And this calling puts us in front of all kinds of interesting people, in interesting places, doing interesting things. All for a great purpose, much larger than any one of us, like being on Oprah.
The Dominican Sisters of Mary invited us to their big day. Look at this.
On the top of the Billboard classical music charts, or on a television game show.
You better believe it!
Join me every week as the Culturecast takes you inside Heaven's kitchen to show you how to cook for an army and become a culinary artist. Or go on the road with the sisters and become traveling pilgrims as you learn all the things that can be seen and those that are unseen. Or sit down with Mother Assumpta Long as she unlocks a few stories from some unsuspecting guests. Join us for unlikely adventures, and together, let's learn new things, see new places, and meet new faces on the Culturecast. This week on the Culturecast, join us for conversations with Mother Assumpta Long.
We are so blessed today to have Mother Agnes Mary of the Sisters of Light with us. If we ever needed her community, we need it today. So I'm so glad she's with us so she can just fill us in on a lot of information that all of us are very interested in. But Mother Agnes, thank you I'm so glad you're here.
Well, it's truly a blessing to be here, Mother Assumpta, just to be with you. And this is delightful to me.
I would never thought that this would happen, but we'll go back to the beginning.
Okay.
But first of all, tell us a little bit about your family. I think,
Sure.
family is so important today, so tell us about your own family.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Graces flow through the generations. So one of the wondrous parts that I reflect upon more lately somehow is my mother. And the reality of her own healing. She was a woman who suffered in her late teens and early 20s, or through her 20s, with tuberculosis, to the point where she was really terminally ill. She visited Solanus Casey and actually received a healing. And within months, was engaged to be married to my father, whom they had dated years prior to the illness. So I look at that and I think of the mystery of that, that I exist and my siblings, by God's grace.
How many siblings?
I have 7.
And I've met them all, I think.
I think you've met them all.
Yeah,
they're
parents,
wonderful family.
I take it you're Irish.
And yes, just a bit. And a wonderful family of faith. And so you can imagine, with that as my mother's background, there was great devotion in her heart to the Lord and in my father. And so we were raised, and also at a time, Mother, that, as you would know, at a time when there was coherence in the culture and in communities. And so being raised in a farming community of Irish farmers, it was all of one piece, the church and life, families. So it was a great, stable foundation and introduction to the integration of faith in life, for which I'm really grateful.
You should be so tremendously grateful when you think that families are suffering so much today, and to see that root in the faith, that great. Now, it's interesting to me, how did you get into the particular education field that you got into, coming from like a farming, so what?
Well, my parents were both educators, although my father's family had been farmers, but after the war, they left active farming because small farms were not really a realistic way to move forward. And I think it was native to them. They surely loved teaching. And so I was intrigued by it, but I was also intrigued by psychology. So decided to study psychology and worked in that field in the schools with young children, looking mostly at developmental issues and family issues and helping them adjust, their learning styles to become successful.
That is great. What colleges or universities did you teach in?
Well, then I did teach at William and Mary, and before I entered religious life, I was teaching at Teachers College at Columbia in the city, which was wonderful.
Oh, right in the city. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Mother Agnes Mary, it fascinates me because I remember this. I remember when Cardinal O'Connor put an ad in the paper, Help Wanted.
Yes.
And I can remember Help Wanted for the pro-life, community. And I can't remember whether I actually wrote him, but I thought about it. That is great. Never knowing that I would ever, knowing his Sister of Life. But it was just thrilling because I knew Cardinal O'Connor. Oh, how did you respond immediately to that call? Help Wanted. That is just fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yes.
I didn't, actually, Mother. But the sisters in my group did. They responded specifically to that ad. I had just moved to New York and wasn't yet getting the Catholic paper. He wrote, I think, in October that fall. But what I did, I often went to St. Patrick's because he was an outrageously effective preacher. So I often went there, and one day I was there when he spoke of the fact that he was founding a contemplative, active apostolic community. And I had recently received a grace that was really transformative in my life, which was a recognition of a call to religious consecration. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, my goodness, I really need to ask what this is all about. What is he up to? And so one thing led to another.
Isn't it just unbelievable, the providence of God, how it works in individuals?
Isn't it?
And that you would have answered this call. It's fascinating to me. So how did this come about? I mean, you got these women that were responded to him, and then you heard. Mm-hmm. So how did he?
Well, it's. I think we have to go back a bit in his life because. You will remember the story of the grace of the charism of life. He was in the military for 27 years, and he was on retreat. And he was assigned largely to the NATO nations in Europe, on retreat in Germany at the Carmel, on the perimeter of the concentration camp in Dachau. And he tells a story that you've heard many times, I think. He told the story of how he was praying that day, walking about the camp, and walked toward the crematorium and through them. And he then speaks of a mystical experience where the cardinal then says he placed his hands. And you can tell that now it's moving beyond the physical reality of the moment to something spiritual. He said he placed his hands in the semicircular red brick ovens, and he said, I could feel the intermingled ashes of man and woman, of child, of priest and rabbi, and went on. And he said, and my soul cried out to God, good God, how could man do this to man? And it was then that he would claim that something deeply was impressed upon his soul, and it was as if a call to defend the dignity of the human person with the rest of his life. And he would then quote scripture and say, a light shone in the darkness, which could not overcome it. It was a powerful grace.
That is so beautiful. I think, all the founders or religious community, that special grace that he happened to be in that particular spot at that particular time.
Exactly.
And I was thinking, even when he founded the Sisters of Life, who would ever know that our culture has gone this far? And I think that he began it at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
and God has certainly blessed it. So have you seen the growth in the community from the beginning? Like there were only how many in the beginning?
Well, there were 8 of us.
Yeah.
8 of us in the beginning, 5 of whom are still with the community.
Yes.
And you arrived and were a critical part of our beginning. You arrived on the Queenship of Mary in 1992. I remember.
I bet you did. I bet you thought, oh no, what's coming?
I said, thank God. And how wonderful it was, and you brought with you, we had you for a full year with Sister Yvonne Mary, remember?
Yes, yes.
The Religious Sisters of Mercy of Alma. And for a year, you were our formator, drawing us into the greatest and the deepest traditions of religious life and leading us to understand their beauty and forming us as novices, teaching us all those classes on the documents of the Second Vatican Council, and working yourself so closely with Cardinal O'Connor to faithfully interpret his vision for the community. So it was a wondrous year of formation.
I must say that it was one of the greatest years of my life. I mean, to work closely with him. I know we didn't agree with one another, but it was just so healthy. I remember being concerned about this, and I don't know if I ever said anything to you or not, but it was so beautiful. I was always concerned because the Sisters of Light it was just so special to him and so wonderful. I know that when everyone went to the cathedral, you always had the first pew, and there were wonderful sisters there in the diocese. And I remember telling you, you are special, but you always make sure you really go out to the other religious, and because he loved them too.
He did.
But this was his I don't know if we can call it creation or what, and he had a special love for you, and I'm sure that he probably thinks, I don't know, maybe he'll send down storm from heaven, but he probably thinks that this was maybe the greatest or one of the greatest things he did as an archbishop.
I think he did.
I really think he did.
I think he did.
And I realized this, and I thought, there's something wonderful, something beautiful going on here.
Absolutely. And it tells you something about him, doesn't it, Mother? That he would think that this was the greatest thing, because even in his lifetime, we were still very small and we were very fledgling. And yet he was unswerving in his dedication and his loyalty and his hope for this, which tells you that he was operating with a spiritual vision, with a vision that he believed God was going to do this. It wasn't of his making. He believed he was called forth to do it, and that God, he said, if this is of God, it will perdure.
He had
and
that
if
faith.
It wasn't,
he did have that faith.
It wouldn't, and that was all right.
Oh. I remember when I first went there, I thought, oh my goodness. We met, and he believed at that time, I think he changed a little, that the community was governed by the group. So y'all were just expressing all kinds of ideas. And I thought, oh no, they don't know anything about religious life. I've got to. But it was so beautiful how the Holy Spirit worked through all that.
All of it.
And I would tell him if I didn't agree. When it was wonderful. Yeah. It was wonderful because he had a humility, and yet he was very strong.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't mind expressing our opinions to one another. But I thought, oh my goodness, but there are a few things they don't know. But really, I must say, with all of you there, I will never forget, you were wonderful, because I thought, I came in, and he didn't want to come in like a top sergeant or something, but he asked me to, but I was amazed because y'all had, designed your habit and picked out, a lot of things you had done, and I didn't want to come in. And, I just wanted to do what I could. I was going to be there for a year and do what I could. But I must say that I've been always so impressed with you. You were wonderful.
Well, you gave us something that we could not have given ourselves, Mother. You loved religious life, and you loved and valued the traditions and the disciplines that led to the full flowering of one's religious consecration. And without that, we would have fallen apart. You came, and you saw what was going on. And it wasn't bad, but it was just unknowing, and slowly and very gently, but very firmly, you drew us to say, now this is how we should do it. We should be up and we should be praying at this hour, and just the beauty of discipline that allows for truly the individual flourishing of the sister, for the flourishing of the apostolate, for the purposefulness with which we live life.
But it showed how good you sisters were, because you were wonderful, really. Yeah. I remember being very edified, because I thought, they're going to want me to come in, and but you were really, we
were desperate for you to come in.
Now, but look how it's grown. At that time, there was that one house. Where all have you? I get your publication.
Yeah, the magazine.
The list of convents where you are, it's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Tell us about that. I mean, where are you?
Sure.
What's going on?
What are we doing? Sure. We're, Mother, we're in about 11 convents now. And about a good number of them in the New York metropolitan area. And then we're also in Toronto. That was our first distant foundation. Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Denver. And we will be opening new convents in the near future, too. But though that growth, we've never had explosive growth, but God has blessed us with a very steady growth. And it's clear to us He wants this, because He sends us beautiful young women, as I see in your community, and who desire holiness, and who desire they come out of the culture. They come out of the culture which is so damaging often to the human person. And they desire, having found Jesus and having found the truth of the human person in the gospel, desire so greatly to bring that message to their own peers who are suffering often.
It's fascinating. Vocations are marvelous, and I found that all of the young women called to your community had such a love for life. And I was thinking,
the gift of it.
I remember even when I was there, I had a love for life, but I didn't have the charism. And I told the cardinal, I said, I can't do anything about your charism of what you're going to do. Right. And it was just beautiful to see how God calls these women to a particular community.
Yes.
Exactly. But they were all so pro-life and just in it. And I thought, this is great.
Exactly.
What all are your sisters doing?
Yes, many things, Mother. It began with, as you know, always with evangelization. We were doing a mission of evangelization, bringing the message of God's great gift of life and the dignity and the sacredness of the human person. And as we brought that gift, what became obvious was it's so easily forgotten these days. And so then we are at the service of those who have been touched by the irreverence of the culture. So we serve young, vulnerable, pregnant women, around 1,000 a year in Toronto and Philadelphia and mainly in New York, who come to us, who are frightened out of their minds with this turn of events, who desire some alternative other than the death of their child, and who are looking to see what is possible. It's beautiful to accompany these women. And then with a cadre of thousands of co-workers, we actually provide for all of their needs so that they can make a realistic choice to bring this child to birth. Because these young women are often confronted with the thought, either my life's over or this child's life is over. And it doesn't have to be that way. And they become beautiful witnesses to that. We also have, in doing that, women gathered round us who had suffered abortion and came to us and said, we see you helping young pregnant women. Would you help us? And out of that grew, with their help and their collaboration, grew a powerful mission of hope and healing to women suffering after abortion. And you actually witness over these retreats and weekends, and by way of our accompaniment, you witness the Paschal mystery. You move from Good Friday to the resurrection and the redemption of their relationship with God. They often feel so grieved and so shamed by this. And to see them born into life, the life of grace, is unbelievably beautiful to all of us.
Mother, your Christmas cards and the publications, when you see those precious babies,
those precious children,
I think, my goodness, that baby would not have been here.
Yeah.
How long after birth do you allow the women to stay at your homes?
They usually, some live with us, and the ones who live with us, we'll usually accompany, they'll stay with us in our convents, usually for up to 10 months, 6 to 10 months, until they're well on their feet, until they have found what they need to order the beginnings of their lives together as a little family. And then they'll stay with us for years. I mean, they come back to our Christmas parties now with mascara. The ones who were first born, and they're really delightful, and they'll tell us that they remember living here. It's not possible. They were 6 months old when they moved out. But their mothers have kept alive, the love that they experienced.
That is so wonderful. Mother, do you do any ministry with men?
We do. We have...
because I wondered, how is that? Do you have...
Well, obviously, when we're working with a young woman who's pregnant, we're often working with the father of that child, too. And we have wonderful co-workers who are men who will mentor and walk with that young father. Hopefully, with the intention of bringing him to a greater awareness of his own fatherhood, We also serve on campuses, a mission I haven't spoken of, but part of our evangelization, where we're on a number of campuses in the Colorado area, doing a college evangelization mission to students.
That's good.
It is beautiful. And there we will often serve men and women in our programs of prayer, just our accompaniment, our presence, and our retreats for young men and women and pilgrimages. Obviously, primarily because they have priests on campus, but often do not have religious. We have a special call to the young women on those campuses.
Mother, do you find that when you minister to the men that are do you find that often it's succeeded that they get back together, or mostly not? I mean, like, for instance, the women, if they live with you for 10 months, they've got to go out and get a job if they're single moms.
They are.
So does some people help them find a job or housing?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. All of that is what we're helping them put together, the whole of their life before they take the next step, so that they have a place, they have reliable and safe child care, and that they have work for themselves, so that they're able to provide, for their children. So we have a lot of coworkers who assist us in all of these ways.
That is incredible what you're doing.
It's a beautiful expression, Mother.
Is.
It struck us one day that with the vow of poverty and being really poor, that we couldn't provide for these women. But it caused us to call forth the faithful people of God whose faith desired to be animated, who wished to work on behalf of life. And now because of our needs, they have ways that are consistent for them. They'd love to accompany a woman to a doctor's appointment. These young men are so wonderful in moving a woman from this apartment to that apartment, or whatever is needed. They're unbelievably generous.
You know, I love it when you read the history of the church. I think of Teresa of Avila or anyone that founded it. It's always been just these terrific lay people that help financially or,
in every way.
And we're in the same position.
Sure.
And that they have this great love for the faith. And many now, as far as we're concerned, have a great love that they received a good Catholic education and they want religious, they want, and I'm sure with that there's so many people now that are so pro-life, and I'm sure that they feel it a great honor to do anything they can for you.
Yes.
It's just wonderful. I mean, the church is wonderful, you know, so
wonderful
it's great.
Yes.
Now, how do you know much more than I do, but how do you see our culture now as far, do you see an improvement or like in the culture of pro-life? I mean, you get good reports now, better than, I don't know, you don't. So what is your take?
Well, my take, Mother, is that if you look at the media, the things are desperately bad. I mean, that's
true.
Pretty obvious. And I would say that actually, culturally, broadly speaking, we are in a descending trajectory where things are unraveling. Some of the most basic foundations of our culture and of our faith culture, of family, of faith, don't seem to exist as they did. At the same time, and this is where my hope springs from, is that I see a tremendous number of young people who search for things that will sustain them in their lives, who are searching, and sometimes, as St. Paul said to the Athenians, they are searching and looking by way of unknown gods and looking at them. But they are searching. And when presented with the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is really a power there and a conversion that often happens, and that they will live the faith more fervently than their parents who had it more nominally. So I have great hope for them.
I'm right with you on that. I think the young people, there's great hope in them, and thank God yours are on campuses, or what do they do for the young people, and then we in education to really help the young.
Yes, and encourage and strengthen them.
Right, strengthen them in their
strengthen them in their native sense within their heart that this is right, even though the culture is telling them it's wrong. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we'll ever make the news, but that's okay. But at some point, I think there will be the groundswell will have a meaningful critical mass that could possibly change the trajectory. Or the other possibility, I suppose, is that it gets bad enough that there is a certain kind of yuck factor. We don't want to live like this. This is not who we are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah. I'm right with you on that. I think, I just say, when is this going to crash? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
I mean,
course.
Our culture, you think it couldn't get worse, and it gets worse. It gets crazier.
Exactly.
But anyway, there's great hope. God is greater than any of this.
I often love reflecting on Tolkien's notion of the eucatastrophe. He spoke of the resurrection as a eucatastrophe. Good Friday had been lived by the most faithful of Jesus' disciples, and they had no or little reason to remember, after all the horror, what he had said, that he would rise again. And there it was on Easter Sunday. And I expect that at some point in our lifetimes, hopefully, and maybe not, maybe it's going to be for the next generation, there will be that moment of redemption and resurrection within our great nation and our people, and a restoration of a sense of the great dignity of ourselves as persons,
If we could just say, we live in a wonderful country when you think about it. When you think about it, and so let's just be happy. let's rejoice in the good things that the Lord, and just get out there and rejoice and carrying the cross, and we too will have a resurrection.
Exactly.
But anyway, Mother, I can't thank you enough for what your sisters are doing. I mean, I love it. You know, you're very dear to my heart.
I do know that, and you are to ours. I trust you know.
Oh.
And we always feel that when we come to visit you, we've come home to see our cousins.
Oh, good. When I come to
wonderful.
New York, I even stayed at the novitiate house. It was like going home. You know, I loved it. I loved it. And well, anyway, thank you for being with us, and God
Mother.
bless you. And anything we can ever do for you, you can do for us. We just need to unite.
We will. We will.
Okay, God bless you.
God bless you,
Thank
Mother.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this particular show of the Culture Cast, please make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Twitter. But as always, all of this content can be found on goledigital.org.